All right, so in this video lesson, what we are going to be talking about is another type of special right triangle, which are commonly referred to as 30, 60, 90 triangles. So these are triangles where the measures of the angles are 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees. So first off, just a little bit about notation. So notice that you've got this triangle over on the right here. When you want to talk about sides of that triangle, the largest side is still the hypotenuse. And then to describe the other two sides, we'll call this side the side which is opposite the 60-degree angle. And then we'll call this side the side which is opposite the 30-degree angle. So notice that the side that's opposite 60 degrees is always going to be larger than the side that's opposite 30 degrees. So let's see if we can find a pattern, kind of like what we did with our 45, 45, 90 triangles that would also work with a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So let's use Pythagorean theorem and kind of see how this works. So for the first triangle that we're going to look at, we've got our hypotenuse is 8, our shortest side is 4, and we are looking for x. So when we set up Pythagorean theorem, remember that this side opposite your right angle is always going to be the c value, and then we'll just let a be x, or a be 4, and we'll let b be x. All right, so when we plug those into our Pythagorean theorem, we'll take 4 squared plus x squared must equal 8 squared. And then we'll go ahead and simplify that a little bit, so we'll have 16 plus x squared has to equal 64. So then let's get x squared by itself. Let's subtract 16 from both sides, and we'll get that x squared is equal to 48. All right, so let's go ahead and solve. We'll take square root of both sides. So square root of x squared equals square root of 48. And now we just need to simplify. So square root of x squared is just x. Square root of 48 we'll rewrite as the square root of 16 multiplied by the square root of 3. And then square root of 16 is 4. Square root of 3 we leave alone. And then there would be our final answer for x. So you might not see a pattern just yet. It's kind of hard to see a pattern after just one, so let's try another one. So in this next triangle, we've got our hypotenuse is 10, so that's going to be our c value. We've got a, we'll just make that be x, and we'll let b be equal to 5. So when we set up our Pythagorean theorem, we'll say that x squared plus 5 squared has to equal 10 squared. And then we'll simplify that, so x squared plus 25 has to be equal to 100. And then we'll subtract by 25 from both sides and get that x squared is equal to 75. So now let's get x by itself. Let's go ahead and take square root of both sides. So square root of x squared, square root of 75. And we already know the square root of x squared is just going to be x. Square root of 75, we'll go ahead and simplify. We'll first rewrite that as the square root of 25 multiplied by the square root of 3. And then we'll go ahead and simplify one more time. Square root of 25 is 5, and square root of 3 we leave alone, and there would be our final answer. At this point, you might kind of see what the pattern is going to be. Let's just do one more, make sure that what you're thinking about actually works, and then we can definitely write it out and see what we're going to use for this type of special right triangle. So this last one, we've got our hypotenuse is 12, the shorter side is 6, so we'll make c be equal to 12, and again, we'll just let a be x and b be 6. So when we set up Pythagorean theorem, we'll take x squared plus 6 squared is equal to 12 squared. And then we'll go ahead and simplify x squared plus 36 to be equal to 144. And then from here, we'll go ahead and subtract 36 from both sides. So we'll have that x squared is equal to 108. And now we just want to get x by itself, so we'll take square root of both sides. All right, so left side, now we just have x. For the right side, we'll simplify square root of 108. We'll rewrite that as the square root of 36 multiplied by the square root of 3. And then one more time, we'll simplify square root of 36 to be 6. And then square root of 3 we'll leave alone. Okay, so let's talk about the patterns that we should see. So what do we notice about the side opposite the 30-degree angle? So we're looking at where A is 4, A was equal to 5, and B was equal to 6. So that was where we had all of our shorter sides. Notice that those were always half of whatever the hypotenuse was. So those are always going to be half of our hypotenuse. Now let's talk about the side that's opposite the 60-degree angle. So when you're looking at that, that was what we were solving for. So 4 square root of 3, 5 square root of 3, 6 square root of 3. Notice that they all have square root of 3s. And even furthermore, look at the numbers in front, 4, 5, and 6. Those were always the length of our shortest side. So we're going to take our side, which is opposite the 30, and we're going to multiply that by the square root of 3. So let's write those out as our rules for our 30, 60, 90 triangles. So for the hypotenuse, for the rule there, we're going to say that that is double our side, which is opposite 30. So if you take the side that's opposite your 30-degree angle, multiply that by 2, that's going to be your hypotenuse. Kind of flip-flop that around, and we can also say that our side, which is opposite the 30, is our hypotenuse divided by 2. Or multiplied by 1/2 would be another way to think about that. Finally, for our side, which is opposite our 60-degree angle, that's always going to be the side which is opposite our 30 multiplied by the square root of 3. All right, so let's take a look at some examples and make sure we know how this works. So we're going to use that rule to solve our 30, 60, 90 triangles for the missing side lengths. Notice that we also have a proportion set up similar to what we did in the previous video, where we're going to say that opposite our 30-degree angle divided by 1 must be equal to opposite our 60 divided by square root of 3, and that has to be equal to our hypotenuse all over 2. So let's first just make sure we can identify which sides are which, and we'll plug them into that proportion. So obviously x is our hypotenuse here on this first example. 15 is the side which is opposite our 30-degree angle, because if you go from your 30-degree angle, opposite of that is 15. And then opposite our 60-degree angle, that would be equal to y. So let's plug those in. Opposite 30 we said was 15. Opposite our 60 was y. And our hypotenuse was x. So when we solve for these, we're going to use just the parts that we want to know. And so when we want to solve for x, the two pieces we're going to use is the 15 over 1 and the x over 2. So we're going to say 15 over 1 has to equal x over 2. And then to solve that, we just have a couple steps to simplify. And really, we could cross multiply to make it easy. Take 1 multiplied by x is just 1x. And then take 15 multiplied by 2 is 30. And there we already have our side length for x. Let's do the same thing for y. Again, just use the parts that you would want to use. So again, we'll use the 15 over 1. And then we'll use the y over square root of 3. And again, we're just going to cross multiply. So 1 multiplied by y is 1y. 15 multiplied by the square root of 3 is just 15 square root of 3. And just like that, we're done. So let's do the same thing with the next one. So with our next triangle, let's identify what each of the sides is, and then we'll go ahead and plug them into our proportion. So our hypotenuse is opposite the right angle, so that's going to be x. And then we'll have our opposite 30 as 50. And then our opposite 60 as y. All right, so let's plug this into our proportion here. So opposite 30 was equal to 50. Opposite of 60 was equal to y. And our hypotenuse we're going to have as x. So again, when we want to solve for x, we'll take the x over 2, the 50 over 1, set those equal to each other. So that would be that 50 over 1 is equal to x over 2. And then we'll cross multiply. 1 multiplied by x is 1x. 50 multiplied by 2 is 100. So we can say that x is equal to 100. For the next one, for y, we'll do kind of the same thing. We'll still use the 50 over 1. But now we're going to set that equal to y over the square root of 3. All right. So then solving for y, we're just going to cross multiply. 1 multiplied by y is 1y. 50 multiplied by the square root of 3 is 50 square root of 3. And actually at that point, we are done. All right. Let's do a few more, and then we'll call it a day. So for the next one, let's go ahead and label all of our sides. Again, here's our right angle. So opposite that right angle is going to be our hypotenuse, which is y. Opposite our 30-degree angle is this square root of 6. And opposite our 60-degree angle is going to be x. So let's go ahead and plug those into our proportion. So opposite 30 was equal to square root of 6. Opposite of 60 was x. And our hypotenuse was y. So solving for x, we'll take the x over square root of 3 and set that equal to square root of 6 over 1. Again, once you've got that set up, you just cross multiply. 1 multiplied by x is 1x. Square root of 6 multiplied by square root of 3 is square root of 18. And then to simplify, we just need to rewrite that as the square root of 9 multiplied by the square root of 3. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of 3 we leave alone, and there is x. All right, so now let's solve for y. So we'll take y over 2 and set that equal to square root of 6 over 1. Again, once you've got that set up, just go ahead and cross multiply. So 1 multiplied by y is 1y. Square root of 6 multiplied by 2 is 2 square root of 6. And actually at that point, we can't simplify anymore, so we would be done. All right, just a few more examples that we are going to look at. And these are going to start to be a little bit different because we'll start to have the hypotenuse instead of the other side. So don't think that these are all going to be the same. They are going to be each a little bit different. All right, for our next one, let's go ahead and get all of our sides labeled. So opposite our right angle is going to be our hypotenuse. And then same thing for opposite our 30 and opposite our 60. All right, so plugging those into our proportion, opposite 30 was x, opposite 60 was 18 over square root of 3, and hypotenuse was y. All right, so starting with x, we're going to set the x over 1 equal to 18 square root of 3 over the square root of 3. And really, we don't even have to cross multiply this. All we really have to do is go ahead and simplify everything. So if we take x over 1, that's just x, and the square root of 3's are going to cancel to just give us 18. So then we have that x is equal to 18. Next, we'll solve for y. So we'll take y over 2, set that equal to 18 square root of 3 over 3. So we'll have that 18 square root of 3 over 3 is equal to y over 2. Now again, let's go ahead and simplify and take away the square root of 3's. So 18 would be equal to y over 2. And then all we have to do is multiply each side by 2 to get that y is equal to 36. All All right. So let's take a look at some examples where we're given the hypotenuse to see how this is going to be just a little bit different. So in this next example, notice that we are given our hypotenuse, which is 12, and then we're going to look for our other two sides, so the one that's opposite 30 and the one that's opposite 60. So if we get all of those plugged into our proportion, opposite 30 is x, opposite 60 is y, and hypotenuse is 12. So then to solve for x, we'll take x over 1, set that equal to 12 over 2. And then we just really have to simplify. X over 1 is just x. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So now let's solve for y. So we'll take y over the square root of 3 and set that equal to 12 over 2. So let's go ahead and simplify the 12 over 2 to be a 6. And then we can multiply both sides by the square root of 3. That'll give us y by itself is equal to 6 over the square root of 3. All right. For this next one, notice that our hypotenuse is going to have a radical in it. So we've got 4 square root of 3. That's going to be our hypotenuse. And then we've got our side opposite the 30 is y, and the side opposite the 60 is x. So plugging those into our proportion, opposite the 30 is y, opposite the 60 is x, and our hypotenuse is 4 square root of 3. Okay, so starting with x, we're going to take x over the square root of 3 and set that equal to 4 square root of 3 over 2. And let's go ahead and cross multiply here. So we'll take x multiplied by 2 is 2x, and then we'll take 4 square root of 3 and multiply by the square root of 3. So on the right side, remember that when you're multiplying a square root by itself, you'll just get the number underneath, so that'll be just 4 multiplied by 3. So we'll have that 2x is equal to 12. And then to get x by itself, divide each side by 2, and you'll come up with x is equal to 6. Next, we'll take y over 1, set that equal to 4 square root of 3 over 2. Now, let's just go ahead and simplify what we can before we try to do any multiplying. So y over 1 is just y. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So we've got that y is equal to 2 square root of 3. And actually at that point we would be done. All right, 2 more left to go. So notice that this time we don't have the hypotenuse or the short leg, but we actually have the longer leg, so the side opposite the 60. So our hypotenuse is going to be y, opposite the 60 is going to be 22, and opposite the 30 is going to be x. So opposite the 30, we'll have x being over 1. Opposite the 60, we'll have 22 over the square root of 3. And our hypotenuse is y. So to solve for x, let's go ahead and take x over 1 and set that equal to 22 over the square root of 3. Now remember, x over 1 is just x, so we've got x is equal to 22 over the square root of 3. And now we're going to want to rationalize that, multiply both numerator and denominator by square root of 3. And we'll have x is equal to 22 square root of 3 all over 3. Now let's go ahead and solve for y. So we'll take y over 2 and set that equal to 22 over the square root of 3. So let's go ahead and cross multiply here. We're going to end up with y multiplied by the square root of 3 is equal to 2 multiplied by 22, which is 44. So now to solve, we're going to just divide each side by the square root of 3. So we're going to have that y is equal to 44 over the square root of 3. But then don't forget that we're going to need to rationalize that. And that'll become 44 square root of 3 over 3. All right, very last one. This will be it for today. So we've got our side, which is opposite our right angle. Our hypotenuse is y. Our side opposite our 30-degree angle is going to be x. And our side opposite our 60-degree angle is equal to 18. So filling those into our proportion, opposite the 30 was x, opposite the 60 was 18, and our hypotenuse was y. So solving for x, we're going to take x over 1, set that equal to 18 over the square root of 3. And x over 1 is just x, so I'm going to write that as x is equal to 18 over the square root of 3. So then we're going to rationalize that, multiply by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. And we'll have x is equal to 18 square root of 3 over 3. But then don't forget to simplify. 18 divided by 3 is 6. So x is going to be equal to 6 multiplied by the square root of 3. All right, now let's go ahead and solve for y. So we're going to take y over 2 and set that equal to 18 over the square root of 3. So let's go ahead and cross multiply. We'll have y squared root of 3 is equal to 2 multiplied by 18, which is 36. So then we'll divide both sides by the square root of 3. So we'll get that y is equal to 36 over the square root of 3. Now we need to go ahead and rationalize, so multiply by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3, and we'll get 36 square root of 3 over 3. But there's actually going to be one last thing we can do to simplify, which is to take 36 and divide by 3, which is 12. So y is equal to 12 over the square root of 3. All right, guys, that is it. That wraps up our notes for 2.6 and actually our notes for Unit 2. So we will start to review and get you ready for your test. Until next time, have a good rest of your day.